The morning sun cast long shadows across the Kepler 442 research station as Dr. Yuna stepped outside her small metal building. The air was crisp and clean, carrying the sweet scent of purple flowers that grew wild across the planet's surface. She breathed deeply and smiled, something she did every morning for the past 3 years. 3 years of complete isolation. 3 years since she had spoken to another human being. 3 years since the Galactic Council had made their decision about her people. Yuna walked to the edge of her small compound and looked out at the rolling hills that stretched to the horizon. This planet was beautiful in ways that still took her breath away. The grass was a deep blue-green color, and strange trees with silver bark dotted the landscape. In the distance, she could see the mountains where the Sky Hunters lived. The Sky Hunters were the reason she had come here. These magnificent birds were larger than any eagle from Earth, with feathers that changed color in the sunlight. They were intelligent too, more intelligent than any creature the galaxy had ever discovered for thousands of years. Different alien species had tried to study them, capture them, or even just get close to them. All had failed. Yuna picked up her datapad and began her morning routine. She recorded the temperature, wind speed, and humidity. She noted which plants were blooming and which animals she could see moving in the distance. It was simple work, but it was important. Someone had to document this world, even if no one would ever read her reports. The isolation protocol was supposed to be temporary. That's what they had told her people when it started. Humans were too unpredictable, the council said. Too dangerous. They formed bonds with other species to isolate, and this somehow threatened the careful balance of galactic civilization. Yuna had volunteered for this assignment before the isolation began. She was a xenobiologist, someone who studied alien life forms. She loved her work and wanted to understand the Sky Hunters. When the isolation protocol was announced, she was already on Kepler 442. The council decided she could stay and continue her research, but she could never leave. A soft sound made her look up. High above, a Sky Hunter circled slowly. Its wings were enormous, easily twice the length of Yuna's outstretched arms. The morning light made its feathers shimmer blue and gold. She watched it fly, graceful and powerful, master of the endless sky. "Good morning, beautiful," she whispered to the bird, though she knew it couldn't hear her. The bird circled once more, and then flew away toward the mountains. Yuna watched until it disappeared from sight. She had been watching them for 3 years, but they had never come close to the research station. The closest encounter had been perhaps 100 meters away, and even then, the bird had quickly flown off. She walked back to her station and began preparing for the day's work. Her equipment was old but reliable. She had cameras, sensors, and recording devices that could capture images and sounds from great distances. Most importantly, she had patience. The research station was small but comfortable. It had been built to house 5 scientists, but Yuna lived there alone. She had a bedroom, a small kitchen, a laboratory, and a communications room. The communications room was the most depressing part of the station. She could send reports to the council, but she could never receive personal messages. The isolation was complete. Around noon, Yuna heard a sound she had never heard before. It was electronic, harsh and urgent. She ran to her communications equipment and saw a red light flashing on the emergency frequency. Someone was sending a distress signal. Her heart began to race. In 3 years, she had never received any kind of communication on the emergency frequency. She put on her headphones and listened carefully to the signal. It was automated, repeating the same message over and over in several different languages. "Mayday, Mayday, this is Transport Vessel Harmony requesting immediate assistance. We have crashed approximately 15 kilometers northeast of the research station on Kepler 442. Multiple injuries. Repeat, multiple injuries. Any station receiving this signal, please respond." Yuna stared at the radio equipment. The message was clear, but it created an impossible situation. The isolation protocol was absolute. She was forbidden from having contact with any other intelligent species. If she responded to this distress call, she would be breaking the most important law in galactic civilization. But people were hurt, maybe dying. How could she ignore that? She looked out the window at the peaceful landscape. Somewhere out there, perhaps 15 kilometers away, beings were suffering. The moral choice was obvious, but the legal choice was equally clear. She was supposed to ignore the signal and report it to the authorities. They would send a rescue team eventually, but eventually might be too late. Yuna made her decision quickly. She activated her emergency beacon and sent a response on the same frequency. "Harmony, this is Kepler 442 Research Station. I received your distress signal. I am sending coordinates for my location. I have medical supplies and can provide assistance. Please respond if you are able." She waited, but there was no response. The automated distress signal continued to repeat. Yuna gathered her emergency medical kit, portable scanner, and other supplies. She loaded everything into her small vehicle and checked the coordinates one more time. 15 kilometers northeast, through rough terrain and dangerous wildlife. She had never traveled that far from the station before, but she had to try. As she started the vehicle, she noticed movement in the sky. 3 Sky Hunters were circling high above, their massive wings catching the afternoon light. They seemed to be watching her. But that was impossible. The Sky Hunters never paid attention to anything happening on the ground. Yuna drove away from the safety of her research station toward an unknown situation that could change everything. She didn't know what she would find at the crash site. She didn't know if she could help. She only knew that she had to try. The isolation protocol had kept her people separated from the galaxy for 3 years. But today, Dr. Yuna was about to discover that some things were more important than following rules. Some things were worth the risk. Behind her, the research station grew smaller and smaller. Ahead of her, the Sky Hunters continued to circle, as if they knew that something important was about to happen. Something that would change not just her life, but the way the entire galaxy thought about humanity. The distress signal continued to broadcast its desperate message as Yuna drove toward whatever waited for her in the wilderness of Kepler 442. The crash site was worse than Yuna had imagined. The transport vessel Harmony lay twisted and broken at the bottom of a steep valley. Its hull split open like a cracked egg. Smoke rose from several sections of the ship, and debris was scattered across the blue-green grass for hundreds of meters. Yuna parked her vehicle at the top of the valley and grabbed her emergency kit. The climb down was dangerous, with loose rocks and sharp metal pieces everywhere. She moved carefully, calling out as she descended. "Hello, can anyone hear me? This is Dr. Yuna from the research station. I'm here to help." A weak voice answered. "From inside the wreckage here. We're here. Please, be careful." Yuna reached the main section of the ship and found a large hole in the side. She shone her flashlight inside and saw movement. 3 figures were trapped under a collapsed beam. But they were alive. "I'm coming in," she called. "Stay calm. I have medical supplies." She squeezed through the opening and immediately stopped. The 3 survivors were not human. She had known this was possible, but seeing them in person was still shocking. One was tall and thin with skin that looked like living crystal. Another was covered in green scales and had large golden eyes. The third was wearing some kind of containment suit, and she could see energy patterns moving inside it. All 3 were staring at her with expressions of pure terror. "No," whispered the crystalline being, "not human, please, not human." The scaled one tried to push himself away from her. Despite being trapped under the beam, "They sent a human to kill us. This is how it ends." Yuna stopped moving. She had expected many reactions, but not this level of fear. These beings were more afraid of her than they were of their injuries or the crashed ship. "I'm not here to hurt you," she said softly. "I received your distress signal. I came to help." "Humans don't help," said the energy being in the containment suit. Its voice was like wind chimes, musical but sad. "Humans take. Humans control. Humans destroy." Yuna felt a wave of sadness wash over her. This was what the galaxy thought of her people. This was why the isolation protocol existed. The other species were so afraid of humans that they would rather die than accept help from one. "My name is Yuna," she said, setting down her medical kit slowly. "I've been alone on this planet for 3 years. I'm not here to hurt anyone. I just want to help you get free from this beam." The crystalline being made a sound like breaking glass. "Yuna, that's a human name. You're really human." "Yes, I am. But I'm also a doctor. I can treat your injuries. Please, let me help you." The 3 survivors looked at each other. The scaled one spoke first. "My name is Kale. I'm an engineer. My people are the resonance folk. We communicate through sound and vibration." The green-scaled being nodded slowly. "I am Thorn. I belong to the logical collective. We value reason above all else." The energy being in the suit was quiet for the moment. "I am Nira. My people are the light bringers. We exist as pure energy, but we need these suits to interact with solid matter." Yuna smiled, though she could see they were still afraid. "It's nice to meet you all. Now, let's get you out of here." She examined the beam that was trapping them. It was heavy, but not impossible to move. She found a piece of metal that could work as a lever and began to work on lifting it. "You're really going to help us?" asked Kale, his crystalline skin flickering with different colors. "Of course I am," Yuna said, straining against the beam. "Why wouldn't I?" "Because you're human," Thorn said. "Humans enslave other species. They force bonds that cannot be broken. They control minds." Yuna paused in her work. "Is that really what you think we do?" "It's what we know you do," Nira said. Her energy patterns were moving more slowly now, which Yuna guessed meant she was getting weaker. "Your people can make any creature obey them. It's unnatural. It's terrifying." "I've never made any creature obey me," Yuna said truthfully. "I study wildlife. I observe and learn. I don't control anything." She managed to lift the beam enough for them to crawl out. All 3 survivors had injuries, but nothing life-threatening. Yuna cleaned their wounds and applied bandages from her medical kit. "Your ship is badly damaged," she said. "You won't be able to repair it. But I have a vehicle that can take us back to my research station. You can rest there while we figure out how to get you rescued." The 3 survivors exchanged glances. "You want us to come to your base?" Kale asked. "It's not a base. It's just a small research station. I live there alone. You'll be safe there." "Safe? With a human?" Thorn's golden eyes were wide with disbelief. "Safer than staying here," Yuna pointed out. "Your ship is leaking fuel, and there are predators on this planet that hunt at night. My station has food, medical supplies, and communication equipment. Nira spoke up. What do you want in return? Nothing, Una said. I just want to help. Humans always want something, Thorn said. It's in your nature. Una felt frustrated but tried not to show it. Look, I understand why you're afraid. I don't know what stories you've heard about my people, but I'm not your enemy. I'm just someone who heard a distress call and came to help. She stood up and shouldered her medical kit. I'm going back to my station now. You can come with me, or you can stay here and take your chances with the night predators. It's your choice. She started walking toward her vehicle, hoping they would follow. Behind her, she heard them talking in low voices. Kale was making musical sounds, Thorn was clicking his tongue, and Nero was humming like electricity through wires. After a few minutes, she heard footsteps behind her. All three survivors were following, though they stayed as far away from her as possible. The trip back to the research station was quiet. Una drove slowly to avoid jarring their injuries, and the three aliens sat in the back of her vehicle, whispering to each other in their own languages. When they reached the station, Una helped them inside and showed them to the common room. She prepared food and water for them, then left them alone to rest. As she watched them through the window, she felt sad. These three beings had been so afraid of her that they had almost chosen to die rather than accept her help. The isolation protocol hadn't just separated humans from the galaxy, it had turned them into monsters in the eyes of other species. But at least now she wasn't alone anymore. For the first time in 3 years, there were other voices in her research station. Even if they belonged to people who were afraid of her, it was better than the endless silence outside. The sun was setting over the beautiful landscape of Kepler 442, and high above, the sky hunters were circling again, as if they knew that something important had changed, something that might change everything. 3 days had passed since the rescue, and the atmosphere in the research station was slowly changing. Kale, Thorn, and Nero were healing from their injuries, but more importantly, they were beginning to see Una differently. On the first morning, they had been terrified when she brought them breakfast. They expected her to demand something in return, to try to control their minds, or to hurt them in some way. Instead, she simply set the food down and left them alone. This doesn't make sense, Thorn had whispered to his companions. Why isn't she doing anything to us? Maybe she's waiting, Kale had replied, his crystalline skin flickering with nervous colors. Maybe this is how humans hunt. They wait until you trust them. But as the hours passed, nothing happened. Una worked at her computer, studied her data, and prepared meals. She checked on their injuries twice a day but never stayed longer than necessary. She was giving them space, something none of them had expected from a human. On the second day, something strange occurred. Nero was sitting by the window when she saw movement outside. A pack of wolf-like creatures was approaching the station. These animals were dangerous predators that had attacked alien research teams in the past. We need to lock the doors, Nero called out in panic. The shadow wolves are coming. Una looked out the window and smiled. It's okay. They're not here to hunt. The three survivors watched in amazement as Una stepped outside, completely unafraid. The pack of shadow wolves, each one larger than an earth wolf with silver fur and intelligent blue eyes, came straight toward her. Instead of attacking, the lead wolf approached Una and gently placed something at her feet. It was a small animal, freshly caught. The wolf looked up at her with what could only be described as affection. Thank you, Juan, Una said softly, reaching down to pet the wolf's massive head. But I have enough food today. You keep this for your pack. The wolf picked up the offering and the entire pack settled down in the grass around the research station. They weren't threatening at all. They were protecting it. Impossible, breathed Thorn from the window. Shadow wolves have never been tamed. They attack everything that moves. She's not controlling them, Kale observed, his skin now flickering with colors of wonder instead of fear. Look at their body language. They're relaxed, happy even. Nira pressed closer to the window. How is she doing this? They got their answer later that afternoon. Una was working in her small garden behind the station when a family of large herbivores approached. These creatures looked like giant deer with silver antlers and gentle brown eyes. The adults were cautious, but their young calf ran straight to Una. The three survivors watched as she knelt down and examined a cut on the calf's leg. She cleaned the wound gently and applied some kind of healing salve. The calf's parents watched but didn't interfere. They trusted her completely. She's a veterinarian too, asked Thorn. No, Kale said slowly. Look at her face. She's not just treating the wound. She's communicating with them somehow. It was true. Una was making soft sounds, and the animals were responding, not with fear or submission, but with understanding. When she finished treating the calf, the entire family touched her gently with their noses before moving away. This is impossible, Nira whispered. Our scientists have tried for centuries to communicate with wildlife. No species has ever succeeded, except humans, Kale said quietly. The most amazing thing happened on the third day. Una was sitting outside in the morning sun, drinking her coffee and reading on her datapad. High above, a sky hunter was circling. This was normal. The great birds often flew over the station, but this time was different. The sky hunter began to descend. All three survivors rushed to the windows. Sky hunters never came close to any intelligent beings. They were the most elusive creatures in the galaxy. Entire research teams had spent years trying to get within 100 meters of one. The magnificent bird landed on the ground about 10 meters from Yuna. It was enormous, with wings that cast shadows like a small aircraft. Its feathers shimmered blue and gold in the sunlight, and its eyes were intelligent and ancient. Yuna looked up from her datapad and smiled. "Good morning, beautiful," she said in the same tone she might use with an old friend. The sky hunter cocked its head and made a soft sound, almost like a greeting dot. Then, impossibly, it began to walk toward her. "This can't be happening," Thorn said, his golden eyes wide with disbelief. Step by step, the sky hunter approached Yuna. She remained perfectly still, but she continued to speak softly to the great bird. Her voice was calm and welcoming. When the sky hunter was close enough to touch, it stopped and looked directly at Yuna for a long moment. Human and bird regarded each other in perfect silence. Then Yuna slowly extended her arm. The sky hunter stepped forward and gently placed one massive foot on her forearm. It was a gesture of trust that no other species had ever witnessed. "Hello, Hanyul," Yuna said softly. "It's good to see you up close." The bird made another soft sound, almost like a purr. It stayed on her arm for several minutes, and they seemed to be having a conversation without words. Finally, the sky hunter spread its enormous wings and took flight, disappearing into the morning sky. Yuna watched it go with a smile on her face. Inside the station, the three survivors sat in stunned silence. "Did that really just happen?" Nira asked. A sky hunter, Kale whispered. "She made contact with a sky hunter." How? Thorn demanded. "How is this possible?" They found their answer when Yuna came back inside. She was surprised to see all three of them staring at her with expressions of wonder and confusion. "Is everything okay?" she asked. The sky hunter, Kale said. "How did you do that?" Yuna looked puzzled. "Do what?" "You made it trust you. It came to you willingly. That's never happened before in recorded history." "Oh, that." Yuna shrugged. "I've been watching Hanyul for about a year now. She's curious about me too, I think. Today she finally decided to say hello." "But how?" Thorn insisted. "What technology are you using? What control methods?" "No technology, no control." Yuna sat down at the table with them. "I just treat her with respect. I don't try to capture her or force her to do anything. I let her make her own choices." The three survivors looked at each other. This was not what they had been taught about humans. "Our governments told us that humans can control any creature," Nira said slowly. "That you have some kind of power over other life forms." "That's not control," Yuna said. "That's communication. There's a big difference." "But how do you communicate with creatures that don't speak your language?" Kale asked. "Why?" Yuna thought for a moment. "The same way you communicate with a friend without using words. Body language, tone of voice, respect, trust. Most creatures are much smarter than we give them credit for. They just need to know that you're not a threat. And they trust you because you're human," Thorn asked. "They trust me because I've earned their trust," Yuna corrected. "Being human has nothing to do with it." "Well, maybe it helps that my people have always lived alongside other species. We learned how to be partners instead of masters." As the day continued, the three survivors began to understand something important. Humans weren't dangerous because they controlled other species. They were feared because they had a gift that the rest of the galaxy had lost, the ability to connect with life in all its forms, and that gift was about to change everything. A week had passed since the sky hunter's visit, and everything had changed in the research station. Kale, Thorn, and Nira no longer feared Yuna. Instead, they watched her with growing fascination and respect. Each day brought new wonders. They saw her tend to injured animals that came to the station seeking help. They watched her share her meals with creatures that their own species considered dangerous. Most amazingly, they observed her daily interactions with Hanyul, the sky hunter, who now visited regularly. "I need to understand this," Thorn said one morning as they watched Yuna sitting peacefully with a family of crystal-backed lizards sunning themselves around her. "My people pride themselves on logic and science, but what you do makes no scientific sense." Yuna looked up from the lizard she was gently examining. "What part doesn't make sense?" "All of it," Thorn replied. "These creatures should fear you. You're a predator species. You have forward-facing eyes, sharp teeth, and the build of a hunter. Every instinct they have should tell them to run from you." "Maybe they see something else," Yuna suggested. Kale, who had been quiet all morning, finally spoke. "My people have. You've studied animal behavior for thousands of years. We've never been able to form bonds like this. How do you do it?" Yuna sat down with them, careful not to disturb the lizards. "Can I ask you something first? When your people try to study animals, what do you do?" "We observe from a distance," Kale said. "We use sensors and cameras to record their behavior. We analyze their movements and sounds. We capture specimens for detailed examination," Thorn added. "We run tests to understand their biology and intelligence. We try to communicate using technology," Nira said. "Sound generators, light patterns, electromagnetic signals." Yuna nodded. "And how do the animals react to all of this?" The three survivors looked at each other uncomfortably. "They run away," Kale admitted. "Or they attack or they hide." "Exactly," Yuna said. You're approaching them as scientists studying subjects. I approach them as one living being meeting another, but that's not scientific, Thorne protested. Maybe the most important things can't be measured by science alone, Una replied. Over the next few days, Una began to teach them what she called the old way. She showed them how to move slowly and calmly around wildlife. She taught them to make themselves seem smaller and less threatening. Most importantly, she showed them how to wait. Patience is the most important thing, she explained as they sat quietly in the grass, watching a group of butterfly-like insects with iridescent wings. You can't force a connection. You have to let it happen naturally. How long does it take? Nira asked. Sometimes minutes, sometimes years. Every creature is different. Kale watched one of the butterfly creatures land on Una's outstretched hand. You said this was the old way. What did you mean? Una smiled as the delicate creature explored her fingers with its tiny antennae. On Earth, my ancestors lived alongside other species for thousands of years. They partnered with wolves to hunt. They rode horses across great distances. They kept birds that would return to them after flying free. It was a partnership, not ownership. But surely your people evolved beyond such primitive relationships, Thorne said. Why would we want to? Una asked. Just because we developed technology doesn't mean we had to give up our connections to other life forms. Some of the most important things about being human can't be improved by machines. That afternoon, their conversation was interrupted by an urgent beeping from the communications console. Una rushed inside and activated the emergency channel. Dr. Una, this is Rescue Command Central. We have detected the emergency beacon from the transport vessel Harmony. Please confirm your status. Una looked at her three companions. They had grown pale at the sound of the official voice. This is Dr. Una at Kepler 442 Research Station. I have 3 survivors from the Harmony. They are injured but stable, understood. We are dispatching rescue vessels immediately. Please prepare the survivors for transport. Estimated arrival in 48 hours. The communication ended, leaving them in heavy silence. They're coming for us, Kale said quietly. That's good news, isn't it? Una asked. You'll be able to go home. You don't understand, Nira said, her energy patterns flickering with distress. We'll have to report what we've seen here. We'll have to tell them about you, so they'll never believe us, Thorne said. And even if they do, they'll see it as proof that humans are dangerous. They'll say you've somehow controlled us, made us think differently. Una felt a chill run down her spine. What are you saying? The isolation protocol exists because the galaxy fears human abilities, Kale explained. If our governments learn that you can really communicate with wildlife the way you do, they'll see it as a threat to their power. But I'm not threatening anyone. You're threatening their understanding of the universe, Nira said sadly. You're proving that there are ways of connecting with other life forms that don't require technology or force, that challenges everything our civilizations are built on. Thorne stood up and began pacing. My people will say you've used some kind of mind control on us. They'll point to our changed attitudes as proof that humans are dangerous, and they'll make sure you never get the chance to prove them wrong, Kale added. Una sat down heavily. You're saying that helping you was a mistake? No, all 3 said at once. Helping us was the most wonderful thing anyone has ever done for us, Nira said. But our governments won't see it that way. They'll see a human who broke the isolation protocol, Thorne said. They'll see a threat that needs to be eliminated. Even if we tell them the truth, they won't listen, Kale said. They'll say we've been corrupted by human influence. That evening, as they sat around the dinner table, the weight of the situation pressed down on all of them. In 2 days, the rescue ships would arrive. Una would likely be arrested or worse. The 3 survivors would be taken away, and no one would believe their stories about human-animal communication. There has to be a way, Una said. Some way to show them that humans aren't the monsters they think we are. How? Thorne asked. How do you prove that you're not using mind control? How do you demonstrate that your connections with wildlife are based on mutual respect? I don't know, Una admitted. But there has to be a way. Outside, night was falling over the beautiful landscape of Kepler 442. The shadow wolves were settling down around the research station for their nightly vigil. In the distance, they could hear the calls of nightbirds and the rustling of small creatures in the grass. And high above, barely visible in the growing darkness, a sky hunter circled silently, as if keeping watch over the small group of friends who had found each other across the vast divide of species and fear. 2 days. They had 2 days to figure out how to change the mind of an entire galaxy. It seemed impossible. But then again, so had everything else that had happened in the past week. The rescue fleet arrived exactly on schedule, but it was not what anyone had expected. Instead of a single rescue ship, 6 massive vessels descended from the sky and arranged themselves in a threatening formation around the research station, and her 3 companions watched from the window as the ships settled onto the grassland. Each vessel was a warship, bristling with weapons and sensors. This was not a rescue mission. This was an execution squad. I'm sorry, Kale whispered, his crystalline skin flickering with colors of deep sadness. We tried to warn them, but they wouldn't listen to our messages. They think we've been compromised, Thorne said, his golden eyes filled with regret. They believe you've done something to our minds. The communication console crackled to life. A cold official voice filled the room. Dr. Yuna of Earth, you are under arrest for violating the isolation protocol and for crimes against galactic peace. Exit the building immediately with your hands visible. The alien hostages will be recovered and decontaminated. Yuna looked at her friends. Hostages, decontaminated. They think you've poisoned our minds somehow, Nira explained, her energy patterns swirling with anger. They think we need to be cleansed of human influence. Dr. Yuna, you have 60 seconds. To comply, any resistance will be met with lethal force. Yuna stood up slowly. I won't let them hurt you because of me. You're not going out there, Kale said firmly. They'll kill you immediately. Maybe that's for the best, Yuna replied sadly. If I'm dead, they'll have no reason to punish your people for helping me. No, Thorn said, standing between her and the door. We won't let them do this. You saved our lives. You showed us something beautiful and true. We won't let them destroy you for it. The voice on the radio grew more threatening. 30 seconds, Dr. Yuna. We are prepared to use force. Yuna gently moved past her friends and opened the door. I'm coming out, she called. Please don't hurt the others. They've done nothing wrong. She stepped outside into the afternoon sunlight. The 6 warships loomed above her like metallic mountains. Dozens of armed soldiers were positioned around the research station, their weapons trained on her. Walk forward slowly, commanded a figure in elaborate armor who seemed to be the leader. Keep your hands where we can see them. Yuna took a few steps forward, then stopped. Something was wrong. The grassland around the research station, usually filled with the sounds of wildlife, had gone completely silent. Then she saw them, moving, out of the forest, across the hills, and through the tall grass. Hundreds of creatures were approaching the research station. The shadow wolves came first, their silver fur gleaming in the sunlight. Behind them came the crystal-backed lizards, the gentle herbivores, and dozens of other species that Yuna had befriended over the years. The soldiers began to look nervous as more and more animals appeared. These weren't attacking or fleeing. They were simply gathering, forming a large circle around the research station with Yuna at the center. What is this? Demanded the commander. What are you doing to these creatures? Nothing, Yuna said truthfully. I think they're trying to protect me. High above, a familiar cry echoed across the valley. Haniel, the sky hunter, was circling overhead, but she wasn't alone. 3 other sky hunters had joined her, their massive wings creating moving shadows on the ground. Impossible, breathed one of the soldiers. Sky hunters never gather in groups. More creatures continued to arrive. Flying insects created shimmering clouds in the air. Small mammals emerged from their burrows. Even the usually solitary night hunters appeared in broad daylight, something that had never been documented before. Inside the research station, Kale, Thorn, and Nero watched in amazement. She's not calling them, Kale observed. Look at her body language. She's as surprised as anyone. They're coming on their own, Thorn said in wonder. They're choosing to protect her. The commander of the rescue fleet was clearly becoming agitated. Dr. Yuna, order these creatures to disperse immediately, or we will open fire. I can't order them to do anything, Yuna replied. They're wild animals. They make their own choices. Lies, you're controlling them somehow. This proves how dangerous humans really are. At that moment, Haniel descended from the sky. The great bird landed directly between Yuna and the soldiers, her wings spread wide in a clear gesture of protection. The other sky hunters followed, creating a living barrier around the human who had shown them kindness. Stand down, Yuna called. To the soldiers, please. I'll come with you willingly, but don't hurt these creatures, they're just trying to help. The commander raised his weapon. You will release them from your control immediately. I'm not controlling them, Yuna said again, her voice growing stronger. This is what you've never understood about humans. We don't control other species. We connect with them. We earn their trust and friendship. Impossible. No species can, for bonds across biological barriers. Then how do you explain this? Yuna asked, gesturing to the hundreds of creatures surrounding them. She slowly extended her arm, and Haniel immediately stepped forward, placing her foot gently on Yuna's forearm. The gesture was unmistakable. Trust, partnership, and friendship. The silence that followed was deafening. Every soldier, every crew member on the ships above was witnessing something that their science said was impossible. Inside the research station, Kale activated the emergency broadcast system. This is Kale of the Resonance Folk, broadcasting on all frequencies. We are witnessing something extraordinary here. Dr. Yuna of Earth has not harmed or controlled us. She saved our lives and showed us something our civilizations have forgotten. Thorn stepped forward to the microphone. This is Thorn of the Logical Collective. Our governments have lied to us about humans. They are not controllers or enslavers. They are the galaxy's greatest hope for reconnecting with the natural world. Nira added her voice to the broadcast. This is Nira of the Lightbringers. What we are seeing here is not mind control or domination. It is communication, respect, and love across species boundaries. This is what we have lost in our pursuit of technological superiority. The broadcast was being transmitted across the galaxy, but the commander didn't care. He raised his weapon toward Yuna. Enough. You will all be silenced. But as he prepared to fire, something extraordinary happened. Every creature in the circle took a step forward. Hundreds of different species, acting as one, moved to protect the human who had shown them kindness. The sky hunters spread their wings wider. The shadow wolves bared their teeth. Even the gentle herbivores lowered their heads, ready to charge. For the first time in galactic history, an entire ecosystem was united in defense of a single individual. And in that moment, the commander realized that he was facing something far more powerful than any weapon his ships could deploy. He was facing the power of connection, the strength of trust, and the unbreakable bonds that could form between different species when fear was replaced by understanding. The sky hunters called out in unison, their voices carrying across the valley like a song of defiance. And for the first time since the isolation protocol began, the galaxy was forced to listen to a truth it had tried to suppress. Humans were not monsters. They were bridges between worlds, capable of bringing together life forms that had never understood each other before. Now the question was, would the galaxy accept this truth, or would they destroy it along with the one who had dared to prove it? The standoff lasted for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. The commander stood with his weapon raised, facing hundreds of creatures united in protection of one human woman. Behind him, his soldiers waited for orders, but their certainty was cracking. On the ships above, crews watched their screens in amazement. The broadcast from Kale, Thorn, and Nero was being transmitted across the galaxy, and responses were flooding in from every corner of civilized space. "Sir," came a voice from the flagship's communication officer. "We're receiving thousands of messages. The entire galaxy is watching this." "I don't care," the commander snapped. "Our orders are clear. The human must be eliminated." But his soldiers were beginning to hesitate. What they were seeing challenged everything they had been taught about humans and animal behavior. This wasn't mind control or domination. This was something else entirely. Una stood calmly in the center of the protective circle, Haniel still perched on her arm. She could feel the tension in the air, but she also felt something else: hope. Her three friends were broadcasting the truth to the galaxy. Maybe, finally, someone would listen. "Commander," called Kale from the research station's speakers, "I'm receiving reports from across the galaxy. Scientists are confirming what we're seeing here. Similar events are being reported on worlds where humans lived before the isolation protocol." "What do you mean?" the commander demanded. Thorn's voice joined the broadcast. "On Rigel 7, the abandoned human colony site is surrounded by protective wildlife. On New Geneva, local creatures still gather at the empty human settlements. The pattern is the same everywhere." "They're not afraid of humans," Nira added. "They miss them." The commander's weapon wavered slightly. "Impossible. Humans are dangerous. They enslave other species." "No," came a new voice from the ships above. It was one of his own crew members. "Sir, I'm reading the reports from our own scientists. They're saying that human-animal bonds were always mutual. The creatures chose to work with humans." "Lies," the commander said, but his voice lacked conviction. Una spoke for the first time in several minutes. "Commander, what's your name?" The question caught him off guard. "What's your name? I'd like to know who I'm talking to." "Commander Dex of the Third Fleet." "Commander Dex, may I ask you something? Have you ever had a pet? A companion animal of any kind?" "What does that matter? Have you?" Dex was quiet for a moment. "When I was young, a small flying creature called a shimmerwing, but that was different." "How was it different?" "It chose to stay with me. I never forced it." "Exactly," Una said gently. "That's what humans do. We don't force bonds. We offer friendship, and sometimes other species accept it." Around them, the gathered creatures remained still but alert. They weren't aggressive, but they were clearly ready to defend Una if necessary. "But the reports," Dex said, confusion clear in his voice. "Humans were said to control entire armies of creatures." "Partners, not slaves," Una corrected. "On Earth, my people worked alongside dogs to hunt and protect their families. They rode horses to travel great distances. They kept birds that would fly free but always return home. It was cooperation, not control." High above, another voice joined the conversation. "This is Admiral Chen of the Galactic Council Fleet." Dex straightened. Admiral Chen was his superior, commander of the entire rescue operation. "Admiral, the human refuses to surrender. She's somehow controlling the local wildlife." "I can see the broadcast, Commander. I've also been reading the reports from our scientists. They're telling a very different story, sir." "Stand down, Commander Dex. Lower your weapons." "But sir, our orders." "I'm changing the orders. New information has come to light." Dex reluctantly lowered his weapon, and his soldiers followed suit. The tension in the air began to ease, and some of the smaller creatures in the protective circle started to relax. "Dr. Una," Admiral Chen's voice continued over the speakers. "The Galactic Council has been monitoring this situation. We've received reports from over 100 worlds about similar phenomena involving former human settlements." "What kind of reports?" Una asked. "Wildlife gathering at abandoned human colonies, creatures that have never been seen together coexisting peacefully in areas where humans once lived. Ecosystems that are thriving despite the absence of their human partners." Kale's voice crackled over the communication system. "Admiral, we've been analyzing the data. Human presence didn't disrupt natural ecosystems, it enhanced them. Humans somehow helped different species communicate and cooperate with each other. This changes everything, the Admiral said. The isolation protocol was based on fear and misunderstanding. We thought humans were dangerous because they could influence other species. We never considered that this influence might be beneficial. Thorne joined the conversation. Our preliminary analysis suggests that humans have a unique ability to serve as bridges between different life forms. They can help species that would normally compete learn to coexist, like what we're seeing right now, Nira added. These creatures would never gather together naturally, but they're united in their desire to protect Dr. Yuna. Admiral Chen was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of a momentous decision. Dr. Yuna, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I offer our formal apology. The isolation protocol was a mistake based on fear and incomplete information. We punished your people for having a gift that the galaxy desperately needs. What happens now? Yuna asked. Now we learn. We study. We try to understand what humans can teach us about connecting with other life forms. The galaxy has become too focused on technology and forgotten our connections to the natural world. Commander Dex spoke up. But Admiral, the Council will never approve of ending the isolation protocol. Too many species fear humans. Then we'll show them what we've seen here, the Admiral replied. We'll demonstrate that human abilities are not a threat but an opportunity. Dr. Yuna, would you be willing to address the Galactic Council? Yuna looked around at the hundreds of creatures still surrounding her protectively. Hanyul remained on her arm, calm and trusting. Her three friends were watching from the research station with hope in their expressions. Yes, she said finally, but I won't go alone. What do you mean? Yuna raised her arm slightly, and Hanyul spread her magnificent wings. I'll come to the council chambers, but Hanyul comes with me. If the galaxy wants to understand humans, they need to see what real partnership looks like. A sky hunter in the council chambers. Admiral Chen sounded amazed. That's unprecedented. So is everything else that's happened today, Yuna pointed out. As if responding to the conversation, Hanyul called out across the valley. Her voice was answered by the other sky hunters, and their combined song echoed off the mountains. It was a sound of triumph, of joy, and of hope. One by one, the creatures in the protective circle began to disperse. They had done what they came to do. Their friend was safe, and the galaxy was finally beginning to understand. But they didn't go far. As Yuna prepared to leave Kepler 442 for the first time in 3 years, hundreds of creatures gathered to watch her departure. They knew, somehow, that she was going to speak for all of them. The transport that took her to the council chambers was unlike any diplomatic vessel in galactic history. Yuna sat in the passenger compartment with Hinola perched beside her, while Kale, Thorne and Nira sat across from them. Through the windows, they could see escort ships from dozens of different species, all curious to witness this historic moment. When they arrived at the council chambers, thousands of delegates from across the galaxy waited to see the human who could speak to the sky. As Yuna stepped out of the transport with Hanil on her arm, a hush fell over the massive crowd. For the first time in galactic history, a sky hunter had willingly entered a space filled with other intelligent species. The great bird showed no fear, no aggression. She simply perched calmly on the arm of her human friend, proof of the impossible bond between species. Delegates of the Galactic Council, Yuna said, her voice carrying across the silent chamber. My name is Yuna of Earth. I come before you, not as a conqueror or controller, but as a bridge between worlds. What you see here is not subjugation or domination. This is partnership. This is friendship. This is what my people have always offered to the galaxy. Haniel spread her wings wide, as if emphasizing the point. The delegates watched in wonder as the legendary creature, untamable and proud, chose to stand with a human before the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. We've spent 3 years in isolation because you feared our abilities, Yuna continued. But fear is just misunderstanding in disguise. We don't seek to control other species. We seek to understand them, to learn from them, and to build bridges between different forms of life. She paused, looking out at the thousands of faces watching her. The galaxy has grown apart from the natural world in its pursuit of technological advancement, but technology alone cannot solve every problem. Sometimes the oldest solutions are the best ones. Sometimes the answer is simply to extend your hand in friendship and wait to see if someone takes it. Haniel called out once, her voice echoing through the vast chamber. It was a sound that spoke of freedom, of choice, and of the unbreakable bonds that could form between different species when fear was replaced by trust. The response was immediate, and overwhelming. Delegates from across the galaxy rose to their feet in thunderous applause. Some were weeping openly at the beauty of what they were witnessing. Others stood in silent amazement at seeing a sky hunter choose to be present among so many different species. The head of the Galactic Council, an ancient being known as the first speaker, stepped forward. Their voice carried the weight of millennia when they spoke. Dr. Yuno of Earth, what we have witnessed today challenges everything we thought we knew about human abilities. For too long, we have let fear guide our decisions. Today you have shown us a different path. The first speaker paused, looking at Haniel with wonder. This magnificent creature chose to come here with you. She shows no fear, no aggression, only trust. How do we know this is not some form of control? Yuna smiled gently. Because, first speaker, you can ask her yourself. I don't understand. Hanyul is free to leave at any time. She chooses to stay because she wants to be here. Watch. Yuna raised her arm, and Hanyul spread her wings. With a powerful thrust, the great bird launched herself into the air, soaring high above the assembly. Gasps echoed through the chamber as delegates watched the Sky Hunter circle freely overhead. For a moment, it seemed as though Hanyul might fly away, returning to her mountain home. The chamber held its collective breath. Then, with grace and purpose, Hanyul descended and landed once again on Yuna's outstretched arm. The message was unmistakable. She chose to be here. Freedom, Yuna said simply. That's what real partnership looks like. She could leave at any moment, but she chooses to stay. That's not control. That's friendship. Kale stepped forward too, addressed the assembly. Honorable delegates, I speak as one who was rescued by Dr. Yuna. We came to her, injured and afraid, expecting the worst from a human. Instead, we found kindness, healing, and truth. She taught us that connection doesn't require force or technology. It requires only respect and patience. Thorn nodded and added his voice. My people value logic above all else. Logically, what we witnessed on Kepler 442 should be impossible. But sometimes reality is more wonderful than our limited understanding. Dr. Yuna showed us that there are forms of communication that transcend science. Neera's energy patterns danced with emotion as she spoke. We have spent centuries trying to connect with other life forms using machines and technology. Dr. Yuna taught us that the most powerful connections come from the heart, not from circuits and code. The first speaker raised their hand for silence. The evidence is overwhelming. The isolation protocol was based on incomplete information and fear. But ending it will not be simple. Many worlds still fear human abilities. Then let us prove them wrong, said a new voice from the gallery. It was Admiral Chen, who had landed just moments before. Let humans work alongside our scientists. Let them teach us what they know about connecting with other species. Let them help us rebuild the bridges we have lost. Murmurs spread through the assembly as delegates discussed this proposal. Some were enthusiastic, others remained cautious. The first speaker considered carefully before speaking again. Dr. Yuna, if the isolation protocol were to be lifted, what would you ask of the galaxy? Nothing, Yuna replied, surprising everyone. We don't want to rule or control anything. We just want to be part of the galactic community again. We want to share what we know and learn from others. We want to help heal the divisions between technology and nature, between different species, between fear and understanding. And if some worlds still refuse to accept humans, then we respect their choice. Freedom means the right to say no as well as yes. We would never force our presence on anyone who doesn't want us there. Hanyul called out again, and this time her voice was joined by others. Through the great windows of the council chambers, more sky hunters could be seen circling outside. Word had somehow spread among them, and they had come to witness this historic moment. The sight of multiple sky hunters gathering voluntarily near the council chambers sent waves of amazement through the assembly. These legendary creatures who had never been seen in groups before were demonstrating their support for the human who had first earned their trust. The first speaker looked at the magnificent display outside the windows, then back at Yuna and Hanyul. Very well. I call for an immediate vote on Resolution 2847, the complete lifting of the Human Isolation Protocol and the establishment of the Human Integration Program. The vote was swift and decisive. World after world cast their support for ending the isolation. When the final tally was announced, the result was overwhelming: 847 worlds in favor, 23 opposed, and 31 abstaining. The isolation protocol is hereby officially ended, the first speaker announced. Humanity is welcomed back into the galactic community as full members with all rights and privileges thereof. The celebration that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. As news of the vote spread across the galaxy, humans on isolated worlds looked up at the sky with tears of joy. The long exile was over, but perhaps the most beautiful moment came when Hanyul, as if understanding the significance of what had just happened, spread her magnificent wings one final time and called out across the assembly. Her voice was joined by her companions outside, and their combined song echoed through the council chambers and out across the galaxy. It was the song of freedom, of friendship, and of hope for a future where different species could work together in harmony. None had dared approach the Falcon. But when Yuna raised her arm, the sky had listened. And in listening, the galaxy had finally learned the truth about humanity. They were not conquerors or controllers, but bridges between worlds, capable of bringing together different forms of life in ways that had seemed impossible. As Yuna stood before the Galactic Council with Hanyul proudly perched on her arm, she knew that this was not an ending but a beginning. Humanity would have much work to do to rebuild trust and understanding across the galaxy. But for the first time in 3 years, she was not alone in that work. The sky had listened. Now it was time for the galaxy to learn what humans had always known. that the greatest strength lay not in domination or control, but in the simple act of extending a hand in friendship and waiting patiently for someone to take it. The age of isolation was over. The age of connection had begun.